Okay, so let's paint a picture. Imagine Lowndes Square in London. Normally, it's, pretty posh, very serene.
Very quiet, yeah. Elegant buildings, embassy.
Exactly. But then picture this. The evening of April 25th, 2025. Suddenly, it's completely transformed. You've got this real outpouring of emotion.
A proper diplomatic drama unfolding. Flags, shouting, raw feelings right there on the street.
A huge contrast to its usual vibe. And it all kicked off because of something truly awful just days before.
The terror attack in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir, that was April 22nd. Just horrific.
26 people killed. That violence, that tragedy was absolutely the trigger for everything we saw outside the Pakistan High Commission in London.
No question. So that's what we're digging into today. We've looked at the reports, the accounts, trying to piece together what actually happened.
Yeah, our mission here is to unpack all the key events, those simmering underlying tensions, and frankly, the pretty astonishing diplomatic spat that came out of it.
We want to give you a clear sense of this moment because it really does say so much about well, the complexities involved.
And it's so important not to forget the sheer horror of that Pahalgam attack itself.
Absolutely. Pahalgam.
Yeah.
It's often called mini Switzerland. It's known for its beauty.
Right. And for that peace to be shattered so violently, 26 lives lost, 25 Indian nationals, one Nepali citizen. It just drives home the human cost.
It really does. You had people on their honeymoon. I think a groom was killed, a businessman, even a local snacks vendor, Kaustov Gunboat from Poon.
Just ordinary people caught up in something so terrible.
And initially this group, the Resistance Front, or TRF, claimed they did it.
Yeah, the TRF, they have alleged links to Lashkar-e-Taiba, Lafaneshti, right?
That's the connection often made, yes. And their initial claim, it mentioned retaliation for India's policies in Kashmir, specifically the domicile certificates.
But then there was a twist.
A big one. The TRF later came out and said, no, we didn't do it. They denied involvement, called the first claim fake.
Which, immediately muddied the water.
Completely. And that's when India pointed the finger directly at Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI.
And specifically named Lati leaders like Saifullah Qasuri and Hafiz Saeed.
Exactly. Accusing them of being the real masterminds. It's not a new pattern of accusations, sadly. There's so much history and distrust there.
And India's reaction this time was, well, it was swift and strong.
Definitely. Prime Minister Modi came out with a really forceful condemnation, vowing to bring the perpetrators to justice.
And then the actions followed, suspending the Indus Waters Treaty.
Which is a huge deal. Closing the border, revoking visas, cutting down diplomatic staff.
It felt like a very decisive, multi-pronged response.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's reaction was, well, predictably different. Prime Minister Sharif called for a neutral investigation.
Which India likely viewed with, let's say, some skepticism.
And their defense minister, Khawaja Asif, labeled India's actions unjust. And you had Bilal Bhutto Zardari making some pretty fiery comments about the Indus River Treaty, too.
Yeah, things got heated very quickly on the diplomatic front.
They really did. Which brings us back to London. That evening, April 27th. The Indian diaspora there, understandably, they were grieving, they were angry.
Angry about Pahalgam and about what they saw as Pakistan's role.
So they organized. Groups like the Friends of India Society, International UK, FISI UK were instrumental. They called the protest All Eyes on Pahalgam.
A clear message.
Absolutely. Condemning what they termed Pakistan-backed terrorism and calling on the UK government to, take notice, maybe take action.
And the scene itself sounds like it was quite powerful.
It was. Lots of Indian flags, placards saying things like, "Stop terrorism," and "Terror on Kashmir."
And chants of Bharat Mata Ki Jai, Hail Mother India.
You saw a real mix of students, professionals, families with kids, all united by this call for justice for the victims and accountability for Pakistan.
But it wasn't just them out there.
No. Supporters of Pakistan held a counter-protest. And that's where things got, well, louder, more confrontational.
How so?
They apparently brought loudspeakers, started playing patriotic anthems very loudly.
Yeah.
It seemed like an attempt to just drown out the Indian protesters.
Right. So less of a dialogue, more of a
shouting match, really. Or maybe a sound clash. The Metropolitan Police were there, trying to keep the two sides separated, maintain order.
And there was at least one arrest, wasn't there, for racial abuse?
Yes, which just underlines how high emotions were running. It was a tense atmosphere.
And then, amidst all this tension, something truly bizarre happened.
Yeah, this is the part that caught everyone off guard. It involved a Pakistani diplomatic official.
Believed to be Colonel Taimur Rahat, the defense attaché.
That's the name that's been reported, yes. He stepped out onto the High Commission balcony.
Okay. And did what?
He held up a poster of Captain Abhinandan Varthaman.
The Captain Abhinandan from the 2019 incident.
The very same. And the poster had text on it. Chai is fantastic.
Wow. Okay, for anyone who doesn't remember, that phrase comes from a video released when Abhinandan was held captive in Pakistan.
Exactly. It became this sort of viral, loaded phrase. Using it like that, from the balcony of the High Commission towards Indian protesters. It was incredibly provocative.
A very deliberate reference to a moment of intense India-Pakistan tension.
But he didn't stop there.
Oh, what else?
While holding the poster and standing next to a banner that read, "Pakistan stands with Kashmiris," he reportedly made a throat-slitting gesture.
He did what? A throat-slitting gesture directed at the protesters.
That's what was widely reported and seen in videos circulating online almost immediately.
Good grief. The reaction must have been explosive.
It was. Social media lit up. People were calling it ISIS style. Utterly shocking. Questioning how any diplomat could behave like that. It seemed like a massive breach of protocol.
I can only imagine. What did FISA UK, the group organizing the Indian protests, say?
They were, as you'd expect, appalled. They called the gesture shocking and utterly deplorable. Said it reflected blatant hostility.
Strong words.
And they demanded the UK Foreign Office take action. They saw it as a direct, deliberate insult and provocation.
Has the Pakistani High Commission said anything? Responded?
At the time of most reporting, no. Just silence, which probably didn't help matters.
That Chai is fantastic poster. It seems almost trivial, but given the context of 2019 Pulwama, the Balakot airstrikes Abhinandan became a huge symbol in India.
A national hero, absolutely. His resilience, his return. So seeing his image and that specific phrase used by a Pakistani official in that manner, it's like poking a hornet's nest. Intentionally inflammatory.
And then you add the throat-slitting gesture on top of that.
It takes it to a whole different level. That's not political disagreement. It feels like a threat. A really aggressive, offensive visual act.
It just beggars belief, really. What could possibly be the motivation? Was it plan or just one individual losing it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Was it a calculated move, approved from higher up, designed to provoke and escalate? Or was it a rogue action by one person caught up in the moment? We don't know for sure.
Either way, it pours fuel on an already raging fire.
Precisely. And you have to see it against the backdrop of this decades-long India-Pakistan rivalry. Kashmir is always the flashpoint.
And India consistently accuses Pakistan of backing militant groups, right? Like Lashkar-e-Taiba.
Yeah.
Saying they funnel weapons, money, training into Kashmir.
Yes, that's been India's stance for years. And they view the TRF, especially since India revoked Article 370, changing Kashmir's status, as basically Let-A operating under a new name.
A proxy group to give deniability.
That's the Indian perspective. Pakistan, of course, flatly denies providing material support. They say their help for Kashmiris is only moral and diplomatic.
Which brings us back to Prime Minister Sharif asking for that neutral probe into Pahalgam.
A call met with deep skepticism in India, especially after they'd already named Kasuri and Saeed as being responsible in their view. The trust deficit is just enormous.
And the UK is stuck right in the middle of this, in a way.
It's a very delicate balancing act for them. London is a major hub for both Indian and Pakistani diaspora communities. Huge communities.
And they have significant economic ties with both countries, too.
So they have to tread carefully. FISA UK is calling for the UK to rethink its policy towards Pakistan, putting pressure on. But London will likely try to avoid taking sides publicly.
Yeah, you saw that with the Metropolitan Police just focusing on keeping order at the protest itself, containing the situation on UK soil.
It's just the diplomat's actions. There's an element of the surreal, almost darkly comic, isn't there? The absurdity of the poster and the gesture against this backdrop of real grief and geopolitical tension.
It's a bizarre contrast, especially when you think about the Indian protesters' reported demeanor.
Right. Their message seemed focused on, unity, justice for the victims, emphasizing the human element.
They kept stressing that these were just ordinary people killed in Pahalgam, trying to appeal to basic humanity, asking the world to see the situation clearly.
While the counter-protesters framed their presence as solidarity with Kashmiris, accusing India of human rights violations, and using loud music to dominate the space.
Different tactics, different messages, reflecting that deep divide. So, where does this leave things, looking ahead?
A lot of uncertainty. Will the UK actually do anything about the diplomat's conduct? Will Pakistan offer any explanation or maybe discipline him? It's unclear.
And the bigger question, what does this mean for India-Pakistan relations? They were already terrible.
Exactly. India took strong steps. The treaty, the border, visas. Pakistan retaliated with things like banning Indian flights over its airspace. It feels like another downward turn.
And the diaspora isn't letting it go.
No. FISI UK and other groups have talked about more demonstrations, keeping the pressure up online with hashtags like #AlliesOnPahalgam, #StopTerrorism. They want to keep this in the public eye.
But ultimately, all this diplomacy, this protesting, these gestures, it all comes back to the people who died.
It has to. When you hear the names, Pragati Jagdale, whose husband Santosh was killed, J.S. Chandramouli, Lieutenant Vinay Narwal, these aren't just statistics.
They're real lives, real families shattered by this violence. The events in London, however dramatic or bizarre, are ripples spreading out from that initial tragedy in Pahalgam.
Absolutely. So wrapping up this deep dive, we started with that horrific attack, traced the immediate diplomatic fallout, India's strong response, Pakistan's counter-narrative, and landed at those protests in London.
And that extraordinary, highly unusual behavior from the Pakistani diplomat really became a defining image, didn't it? The poster, the gesture.
It really crystallized the animosity.
Yeah.
What happened in Lowndes Square, it's like a microcosm, a snapshot of this huge, complex, and deeply troubled relationship between India and Pakistan.
With Kashmir right there at the heart of it all, it shows the wrong emotion, the competing narratives playing out on a global stage.
Yeah, and it's why it's so important, isn't it, to try and look past the sensational headlines sometimes, to understand the layers underneath the history, the politics, the claims of terrorism, the diplomatic maneuvering.
Definitely. It's rarely simple.
Never simple.
So maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. Think about the power of symbols and nonverbal acts in international relations.
Yeah, like that poster or that gesture. How much impact can seemingly small things have on public feeling, on diplomatic ties?
And also, what's the role for us as global citizens when we see things like this? In demanding accountability and seeking justice for victims, maybe it prompts you to look deeper into the history of the Kashmir conflict or how diaspora groups influence these debates.
Lots to think about, for sure.